The 7 themes that covered the contributions that spiritual health practitioners provide in psychedelic-assisted therapy are as follows. The first is that they have competency to work with spiritual material. They bring awareness of power dynamics. They have familiarity with non-ordinary states of consciousness. They have capacity to hold space. They offer a counterbalance to the biomedical perspective. They use generalizable therapeutic repertoire when facilitating psychedelic-assisted therapy. And the last sub-theme is they're skilled at interdisciplinary collaboration. I think it is absolutely essential to have collaboration between departments that are leading clinical trials, principal investigators that are leading the trials, along with spiritual care departments. Because in a lot of university settings, these entities exist in silos. And that's why spiritual health practitioners are not engaged in the work. So if you are a chaplain in some institution somewhere and you're not hooked in with the principal investigators who are doing these studies at your institution, this is really a time for advocacy, for speaking up and saying, actually, chaplains can bring a lot to this work. And these are some of the things we can do, and I'd like to be involved.
As the Lakota say it, mitakuye o yasin. Right? We, humans, animals, plants, water, earth, sky, sun, moon, ancestors, etc., are all related, and we are all in this evolutionary process together, right? So, how does this all apply to our discussion of ethics? We talk about social locations. Can we move from just a statement of our land acknowledgement to an actual consideration of the harm that has been done to indigenous peoples by positivist perspectives? Can we go there? And shouldn't we be going there, especially when we're talking about shamanic states of consciousness and the use of plant spirit medicines? Isn't it time to take what Native peoples have been trying to tell us for several hundred years at face value? What's behind our resistance, right? Also, are we administering medicines or ministering to souls? Does that sound familiar? Rachel Peterson, go. Yeah, I love that quote. In other words, how do we as chaplains hold space for meeting patient spiritual needs of connection, of meaning and purpose, of reconciliation as we move into the world of psychedelic medicine? What is gained and what is lost as we frame what we do scientifically to get a seat at the table of evidence-based medicine? What are the downsides of medicalization and commodification of plant spirit medicines? Finally, back to experience. Can we really challenge the hubris of reductionism and instead treat these plant spirit medicines and other than human teachers with epistemic humility, with cultural humility, thinking about justice, advocating for these realms? Can we do that if we don't ourselves have personal experience in these realms? So that's a question I want us to consider.
So cultivating reciprocity and right relationship with Indigenous communities, we have a long way to go as a community of spiritual care practitioners, and then also addressing histories of religiously based harm, and then become active with eco-justice. So respecting the rights and intelligence of non-human species. These worldviews that we're borrowing heavily from in psychedelic-assisted therapy tend to be animist, and there's a sense of, just taking a substance and medicalizing it has this ethical risk. And so how, as chaplains, can we honor the sentience of the medicines and then move from this human-centric care to kinship and addressing ecological racism and other ecological problems, and then acknowledging, preventing, addressing abuses of power and sexual misconduct, valuing embodied and oral and oral knowledge as well as written and visual knowledge. I mean, even in MDMA-assisted therapy, the music is such an important part of the therapy. And so to become more skilled and to recover, our oral traditions and our oral traditions instead of being so oriented toward the written word. challenging religious exceptionalism and patriarchy. I just tagged that one on to the end because I think that, there's some critiques of psychedelic exceptionalism, but I think we really don't want to add our religious exceptionalism on to layer that on top of psychedelic exceptionalism, to really recognize that there are all kinds of ways of engaging psychedelic experience and that religiosity isn't a exceptional way. And then, just addressing economic injustice and racism, because being an ethical exemplar with psychedelics really begins with just being an ethical exemplar in the world, in a good way. And there's a lot that can be done.